Daniel Carter had built his life on discipline and trust. At 35, he was proud of the man he had become, a respected lawyer, a husband, and above all, a father. His wife, Victoria, had been by his side since their university days. She was beautiful, ambitious, and elegant, the kind of woman who drew attention in every room she entered. Their son, Ethan, was Daniel's pride. At 9 years old, he was bright and curious, always asking questions about the world, always searching for approval in his father's eyes. To everyone around them, the Carters were the perfect family. They lived in a stylish house in the suburbs, vacationed twice a year, and hosted dinner parties where laughter seemed endless. Daniel's best friend, Michael Adams, was a frequent guest. Michael was more than just a friend. He was family. They had grown up together, shared secrets as teenagers, celebrated victories as young men, and supported each other through hardships. But illusions are fragile things. Behind smiles and polished appearances, something was beginning to rot. Victoria had grown distant. She spent longer hours at work, often arriving home after Ethan was asleep. She avoided Daniel's touch, deflected conversations, and when they were together, her eyes seemed to wander elsewhere. At first, Daniel blamed himself. Maybe he had buried himself too deeply in his cases. Maybe he had neglected the romance they once had. He promised himself he would make it right. One evening, he brought home flowers, a rare gesture for him. He imagined her smile, the warmth of old times returning. Instead, Victoria barely looked up. "Thanks, Daniel. They're lovely," she said flatly, before disappearing into the bedroom. Daniel stood alone in the living room, flowers in hand, the silence pressing against his chest. The unease grew. And then came the night when the illusion shattered completely. It was late. Victoria had fallen asleep on the couch with her phone in her hand. A message lit up the screen. "Last night was unforgettable. I can still feel your touch. M." Daniel's blood ran cold. He stared at the letter M. His thoughts spiraled. Could it be Michael? His best friend? His brother in all but blood? He wanted to believe it was a mistake. He wanted to believe he was imagining things. But deep inside, a quiet voice whispered the truth. The confrontation came sooner than Daniel expected. It was a cold morning when Victoria stood in the kitchen, her arms crossed, her tone sharp and detached. "I want a divorce, Daniel. And I want Ethan to live with me." The words hit him harder than any courtroom defeat. "Victoria, what are you saying? We can fix this. Whatever it is, we can." "No," she cut him off. "I don't want to fix it. I don't love you anymore. This marriage is over." Daniel stared at her, searching for the woman he once knew. He wanted to ask about the messages, about Michael, but fear held him back. Fear of hearing the truth. When the divorce case reached court, Daniel faced his worst nightmare. Victoria's lawyer painted a picture of him as a neglectful husband, a man who cared only for his work, who ignored his wife and child. And then, Michael walked into the courtroom. At first, Daniel felt a strange sense of relief. At least my best friend is here. At least someone will stand by me. But when Michael took the witness stand, the world crumbled. "I've known Daniel my whole life," Michael said, his voice calm, steady. "But I've seen how he treats Victoria. He's cold, distant. He spends more nights at the office than at home. Ethan needs stability, and I don't think Daniel can provide it." Daniel sat frozen, unable to breathe. Every word was a blade cutting into him. He wanted to scream, to expose them both. But without proof, it would sound like desperate accusations. So he sat there, his fists clenched, the betrayal burning into his soul. Daniel's instincts as a lawyer saved him. He knew accusations meant nothing without evidence. And so, late at night, when the house was silent, he began to dig. He hacked through bank statements, business documents, and emails. The deeper he searched, the more horrifying the picture became. Victoria and Michael had not simply betrayed him in love. They had betrayed him in business. For years, they had siphoned money through shell companies, using Daniel's name and reputation as a shield. Worse still, the divorce was not just a breakup. It was part of their strategy, with Victoria taking custody of Ethan and claiming half of Daniel's assets, and Michael controlling the fake businesses. They planned to leave Daniel ruined, perhaps even imprisoned. But there was more. In several emails, Victoria and Michael mentioned a third figure, the patron. Whoever this person was, he was clearly the mastermind. Daniel's gut told him the truth. The patron was none other than Victoria's father, Richard Carter. The courtroom turned into a battlefield. Victoria, graceful and composed, played the role of the heartbroken wife. Michael testified with false confidence, twisting stories from their past into lies. Daniel endured it all, his reputation dragged through the mud. But then came his chance. He stood before the judge and presented the evidence. Secret recordings of Victoria and Michael plotting his downfall, financial records proving fraudulent transfers, and bank accounts tied to their scheme. "If anyone here is unfit to raise a child," Daniel declared, "it is not me. It is the people who have lied, cheated, and plotted against their own family." The courtroom erupted. Victoria's mask slipped, her face pale with shock. Michael shouted, calling it fabrication, but his voice cracked with fear. The judge ordered further investigation. The balance of power had shifted, but Daniel's fight was far from over. One evening, the prosecutor revealed the final piece. The fraudulent companies were tied directly to Richard Carter, Victoria's father, a wealthy businessman who had always despised Daniel. Richard believed his daughter had married beneath her. For years, he had waited for a chance to destroy Daniel and reclaim control over her life. Michael and Victoria had been pawns in his larger game. Soon after, Daniel found a note in his mailbox. "Withdraw the case, or Ethan pays the price." His hands trembled as he read it. Fear unlike anything he had known gripped him. Fear not for himself, but for his son. Time passed. The wounds remained, but Daniel learned to live with them. Emma, a journalist who had followed the case, became an unexpected presence in his life. She admired his strength, not his wealth. She saw the man beneath the headlines. Slowly, she and Ethan became part of his healing. Together, they built something fragile but real. Michael spent his days in prison, haunted by guilt and regret. Victoria visited her father behind bars, realizing she had destroyed the only man who truly loved her. One spring morning, Daniel walked with Ethan and Emma through the park. Ethan laughed, chasing pigeons, while Emma squeezed Daniel's hand. For the first time in years, he felt peace. Sometimes, Daniel thought, you have to walk through the darkest labyrinth to find the light. And though betrayal burns, it also shows you who you truly are. And with that thought, he smiled, ready for the future.